Alright, what is poppin', people? We're back, and today, our boy has been freed. Snorlax officially unbanned from NU. Not even very close. That is a 79 to 21 vote in favor of bringing it back down. And with these sorts of suspect tests, I do always wonder how the results are gonna go out, right? Obviously, you can see here, not too many people voted. Usually you would think at least 30 people get Rex, only 19, which is a little disappointing. Maybe I didn't get Rex, but it's beside the point. Hey, I was still frequently playing the ladder at least, so I think I could talk a little bit about Lax. Built with it some, watched friends use it, played against it, used it myself. So I'm gonna try to bring you some insight maybe on why this Pokemon ended up getting unbanned, but also why there were, like, at least somewhat reasonable, I'll say, reasons to want to keep it banned. I say somewhat reasonable because, well, hey, I've always been pretty strongly opinionated. Anyhow, as always, if you are enjoying the content being produced, hey man, just leave a like, subscribe, give me that support. Otherwise, hey man, how am I gonna know y'all like it if you don't show that you do? Anyhow, let's get into it. So, I guess just like general overview of the Mon first, right? This is pretty much the set that we all, from the very beginning of the Suspect, we're gonna focus in on. When we're talking about the Suspect original, let me formulate words. We're talking about the Suspect threat OP. We pretty much said CurseLax is the Mon that we should really care about. You know, yes, there are other sets. There's Choice Band. There's some weird stuff like AV and Belly Drum, I guess, too. But CurseLax is really the only problematic, or not even problematic, the only set really anyone was deeming as potentially problematic, because you're combining this insane amount of bulk through, like, even just stats alone, with a way to compensate for maybe the lacking physical bulk, and make Snorlax just, over time, sort of become like Cresselia, maybe in the eyes of some, where you already check a whole bunch of stuff, but now you're boosting up, so you're also just threatening to end the game. And there was also some debate on, like, coverage, right? So, Body Slam Lariat, this was what most people would run, because, you know, Darkest Lariat was kind of necessary if you wanted to get by Iron Defense Bronzong. You otherwise actually just, you know, lost there. It also provides coverage against ghost types, which, it's good. You don't want to let something like maybe a Decidueye come in and just boost up versus you as well, and then, I don't know, Oko you with a crit leaf blade. But something that some people were also doing a little bit was they were saying, I don't need a stab attack. And they'd run Heavy Slam, because Diancie was one of the most common answers as well to Snorlax. In specific, the Diamond Storm plus Body Press variants. Also, that music is so loud, oh my lord. Shoutouts to this, not thumbnail, but shoutouts to this little Snorlax thing there. Anyhow, some people were on Heavy Slam, because getting rid of Diancie was so huge, and that would be a lot of people's immediate way of trying to deal with Snorlax. You boost alongside it, because inevitably, we got a Diamond Storm boost at some point. And once you get this boost, Snorlax isn't really doing anything versus you. And at the very least, you know, you could then body press it, force it to rest, and then go from there. And so, you combine that really good sweeping potential along with the natural special bulk, letting Snorlax serve as this really potent special wall that can just check a wide variety of threats. You know, anything from, like, Starmie to Goodra to, I mean, I'm trying to think of just some other ones. There's a lot. Dragalge, if you're feeling like you won't get poisoned ever. Heliolisk, really any special attacker in the tier. And there were a good amount of people that viewed that as really unreasonable. You know, you combine all of this utility just throughout the game, and that huge potential to sweep with Curse. I think that was probably the biggest point. People felt that Snorlax could kind of just get in whenever, and if it is healthy, it could set up Curse and win. That was at least what I picked up from people. it very much seemed the notion was, so long as you get Snorlax in safely, yeah, it curses up and you can't stop it. But obviously that didn't seem to be how it went in the eyes of the voters. And so why was that? Well, I think... So, I'm going to show one of the posts that talks about this here. Good for cute seals. I'll just have it over here, because I think this post encompasses a really, like... This is the best way I think you could phrase the anti-ban side, right? So, and we talk about this with a lot of Pokemon, and how when something's your win con, you generally want to, you know, keep it healthy. Win con gets chipped, it probably isn't going to be able to set up and sweep, assuming it's a, you know, setup, sweep, or win con. Regardless, Snorlax's problem was people didn't really seem to want to realize or acknowledge, hey, it's great and all that you can blank special attackers. What happens when you switch into a Starmie more than once? You don't get to curse up anymore. And I mean, even some, you know, that's maybe an extreme because Analytic Starmie is insane and actively, like, 2-hit KOs you. Not 2-hit KOs, but it does, like, around 50 with Analytic Hydro. And so, while Snorlax would maybe be tasked with taking on these huge special attackers, that's severely limiting its ability to set up Curse. You know, it's already weak to hazards to an insane degree. It's weak to all those momentum-grabbing moves as well that a lot of Pokemon it would want to check carry. Think about, like, Heliolisk and Dragalge, for instance, with Volt Switch and Flip Turn, respectively. And so you're really vulnerable to just getting chipped away at over time and constantly pressured by whatever mons they bring in, be it, say, a Tyrantrum or a Toxicroak, a Surfetch'd, you know, etc. Those physical breakers that you cannot have any chance of setting up versus that will just drop you on your ass right there. I think the other point that people really didn't maybe to consider enough was rest and how bad it is as a singular recovery move. Yeah, Inu's got plenty of clerics, right? So it's not like it's hard to wake Lax up. The problem is because Snorlax a lot of the time would be tasked with, or not tasked with, but Snorlax would a lot of the time be just so heavily pressured through the combination of hazards and these really strong special attacks it's switching into. It's spending a lot of its time not actually posing any threat to the opposing team, or at least no active threat. It's just constantly resting and having to sleep. And yeah, the cycle could just kind of keep continuing, where yeah, you may switch into a Dragalge, but have fun taking like 30 from Sludge Bomb, getting poisoned, throwing in rocks there, and oh look, you just took over 50 in one turn. And so now you're gonna have to rest, because, you know, my Draco won't kill you, but it'll take you down to like 5%. So I'm gonna flip turn into, you know, whatever fighting type I have. You can rest up, sure, and let's keep repeating the sequence forever. It was just that Snorlax was so easy to keep pressured through offensive means. And because you had to rely on rest, there were large points of games, or large spans, turn spans, yeah. Much of a game Snorlax would be spent not really actually trying to win the game. It was instead being forced to relegate itself to that, like, really stout defensive pivot. And even then, though, I feel like the special bulk was maybe a little overrated. Which feels weird to say, because it's 160 HP, 110 special defense. How can you overrate that? You know? My answer to that would be when I saw my Spexing DD to an AV Snorlax do, like, 42 with Expanding Force. And yes, that is an absolute nuke of a move. But I think something worth noting, too, is that there are other comparably strong breakers in the tier, right? Analytic Starmie we touched on. It, too, is an absolute nuke that does, like, over half with a Specs Psyshock, for instance, or Specs Hydro. Specs Heliolisk as well, again, something like that. Constantly pressuring with Volt Switch. The Dragalge, not doing nearly as much damage, but poisons from Sludge Bomb, those are still going to be really annoying, and again, force Lax to rest. Because if you're status, you're sure as hell not winning. And there were just a lot of other Pokemon, too, that still gave it enough of a hassle while trying to set up. And I think Swords Dance's Scavalier is an absolutely fantastic Pokemon. And that was one of the better Snorlax answers, because You know, you can knock its lefties. That's obviously going to compound that chip damage weakness further, make it easier to take out while it's resting. And it also doesn't really threaten you with any move unless it gets like several curse boosts going. Iron Defense Bronzong, even with Lariat from Snorlax, you had to get 2 boosts to actually 2-hit KO. And so, say you're in that ideal 1v1, right? Well, Bronzong can Iron Defense up and it'd get like 3 body presses off before Snorlax KOs it with Darkest Lariat. And there's a very good chance Lax could be even dead before that happens. Or at the very least, it's going to be significantly chipped. I think actually you're like taking around 20-ish%. And I mean, from there, it's kind of hard to get your Lax back. Yes, you may have just taken out Bronzong for another teammate, but you lost your Snorlax. And, you know, from there, you do have to contextualize things in the game. You know, what's the Snorlax's team looking like? What's it up against? How necessary was Lax? Does doing that actually open anything up? Yeah. But the point being, it's like, you aren't just dominating these trades. It's very much a, you know, it's a sacrifice you're having to make. You're not just taking over the game by setting up first and beating something. You know, you're trading your Snorlax to beat that Bronzong. There's opportunity cost to it that needs to be recognized. And something I also felt too, when building against, well, yeah, building against Snorlax, we can talk about that. I want to talk about also how Snorlax teams looked in general too, but let's talk about building against it. It didn't feel like it ever went out of my way to have to check it, so we can look at some of my teams that I built recently. So like, Boomburst is fair. This team is pretty fun. Also, yeah, if y'all want to take any of these teams as you see them, go for it. I don't care. Specs Explode! I think Turt Dog talks about it in his post up here. Yeah. Here he goes. He goes about this whole thing. Yeah. Boomburst is good. Let's see his replay here. He's up against an Explode. Yeah, Regidrago meta, but same thing, right? Boomburst still does the same amount of damage. Let's start getting to where we actually see Explode hitting the Lax. Okay, so here we're gonna see some damage. Wait. Alright, yes. Expects Explode just to KO to Snorlax after rocks. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Maybe not. Maybe I should have brought up Explode when I was talking about those breakers. But, you know, you got Specs Explode. Get doink it. I've got, obviously, like, Scarf Chakroto Bow that can potentially cripple it in a pinch. Yeah, my opponent can predict that, but even Nasty Plot Rotom, Turt Dog has a game with that as well, where Nasty Plot, Pain Split Rotom Mo just 1v1s with Snorlax, even starting off at minus... How do we say that? It had Spadef dropped 2 stages by Leaf Storm prior, so that's not exactly looking too good for the Lax user. I think it was one of those Lariat Heavy Slam ones as well, which kind of does go to show, yeah, you can run Heavy Slam to hit Diancie, but there is also opportunity cost there. Even Subseed Sim Comfy, from calcing some stuff, if it is, I mean, regardless of the Snorlax set actually, even if they're Heavy Slam, if you get the sub up and then Leech Seed, you always 1v1 Snorlax. And these aren't like techs I'm going out of my way to use, right? This is just like how I wanted to build the team. I wanted Specs Explode, I wanted the best pivoted tier, and then I wanted a Mon that weakened steel types to facilitate this comfy sweep. Yeah, we can look at this team as well, right? Iron Defense Bronzong just kind of helps shore up that matchup a little bit. Again, we talked about how, yes, Lax technically beats the set, but it's at the expense of much of its health. And then we got Passimian that comes in afterwards and says, okay, have fun, you don't get to rest. And we got this team here as well. More Iron Defense Bronzong. Also, these EVs are expertly crafted, I know. Specs Helios pressured into resting. And it just, I mean, this Wheezing set. It's Wheezing in general, because I wanted another immunity to ground. Leave me alone. I needed a fight resist too, outside of Talon. Leave me alone. But Wheezing fits really well in this team, and Taunt Wisp split, yeah, Lax never beats it. I actually have a replay with this set that I misplayed terribly in, but my opponent definitely gave me some ground in that game too. Point being, right, there's a lot that just beats up on Snorlax, just naturally on teams. And that's not even talking about, again, some of the other things I've mentioned earlier, but like, Swords Dance to Scavalier, really easy mon to fit on teams. Swords Dance to Blade is another really good example. Steelhops in general are really good at slowing down Lax. Deancey fits on a lot of teams. Diamond Storm Body Press being a great means to beat it. We've, I think, also had talked about like Taunt Status Talonflame. Not the easiest set, I think, to get to throw on a team. It does feel a little bit more specialized, but it's still good. We've seen some people use Roar Mudsdale, and that's at least a good short-term answer. Just get rid of Lax, don't let it boost and sweep you from there. Dragontail Guzzlord, very similar in that you can at least get rid of it there. And both of those Pokemon are also fairly frequently featured on Spike's teams. You know, like Mudsdale plus Ferroseed, Garbodor plus Guzzlord. Both pretty good cores. And that's just further, you know, pressuring Snorlax, right? And I also want to talk about, you know, as we alluded to earlier, what the teams that have Lax on them generally look like. In my experience, at least, they're kind of slow. And they kind of just lose very slowly and painfully to a lot of the offensive pressure in NU. And this kind of goes back to the reliance on rest and how annoying it is. But NU, as a tier, have you looked at what we have available to us? Because there's a lot of just these stupid breakers that get to come in and just click buttons. Like, let's look at it. Dragalge, Golurk, Goodra, Sirfetch'd, Starmie, Sylveon, because Spec Sylveon has been used a lot more. Exploud, Helio, Croak. You gotta throw Ground Valley in there. You go for Rest with Lax, and then you're giving turns for this to Swords Dance up. Tauros, Tyrantrum, even something like CB Braviary. There's a lot of stuff that just gets free entry as Lax rests. And they're mons that you don't really want to ever give turns to. Yes, you could say that this kind of applies to any mon that uses a utility move or recovers at a turn. But I think the main point, or the bigger thing at hand here, is that Snorlax is not even capable of responding once it rests. Like, you have to switch there. Unless it's like a mon that's coming in that you just beat, I guess. Like, maybe one of these special attackers who aren't being overwhelmed by it, but as we saw in that one replay, I mean, Exploud is strong enough to muscle by it. Spec Starmie, probably at... I think landing 3 Hydras you might KO, but it's not super favorable. But that pool isn't really decreasing necessarily by a whole bunch. And so, not only... Again, yeah, you could fit a Snorlax on a balanced build, but from my experience, the teams are generally a lot slower, and so they're already naturally matching up kind of not well into those mid-speed breakers that are, you know, literal... they hit like a nuclear warhead. And so you're giving them way too much leeway, I feel, around your team. Yeah, you can still build into them, sure. I mean, they have checks. It's just... you open up so much space for them. And I don't like that with team building at all. But I think that's about all I have to say about Snorlax. From my experiences using it and playing against it, I honestly would probably not even have it. I feel like this is a glass tray situation, where on paper, you maybe want to say it could go all the way up here. I think in practice, it may be more down here. I legitimately believe that it is not nearly the metagame defining force that putting it in like the middle of A or higher would denote it as. And so I think maybe more like A- is a lot more fitting. You still want to respect all of what it does on paper through like stats alone, I feel. But I don't think recognizing it as an integral part of the metagame really is fair. It really makes sense given what we've seen of it. And maybe that'll change. Next week it's allowed in SCL, You know, maybe it gets a whole bunch of usage and it looks really broken. Who knows? But until then, I don't think I could rate Lax much higher than something like, you know, Exploud. That's just my take on it. Obviously, you're free to disagree. And if you do, tell me why. Until next time, though, I hope you all are enjoying your day. So go out around breakfast time, so that's always fun. I hope y'all have a lovely one, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.